Hello, hello, hello. My name is LaJoy Royson, and I'm the program director for Trey Athletes. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This fireside chat will be a conversation with Andrea Hudi, moderated by my colleague Brian Reynolds on building non-athlete identity. Following this moderated conversation, we will have a live Q&A. And so we urge all of our participants to submit questions at any time during the conversation using the Q&A function. If you submit a question, you will have the opportunity to ask your question live if you would like to. For all of our season 3 participants, don't forget that your team can win a pizza party by engaging with us on Trey social media and tagging us at Trey Athletes. Special shout out and congratulations to Lake Highlands High School boys basketball team for winning our first pizza party. You could be next, so make sure you're engaging with us on social media. We're going to drop our Trey Athletes tag in the chat now. Tonight's Fireside Chat is presented by Trey Athletes. We are a Dallas-based youth nonprofit, and our mission is to empower athletes to be leaders, role models, and influential voices for their communities. We believe that by providing athletes with the opportunity to learn from amazing speakers, such as Andrea Hudi, they will have the opportunity to gain necessary insights to be successful on and off the court or field. I'll be back at the end of the conversation to share information and a few updates. I hope you enjoy this conversation. And with that, Brian, it's on you.
Thank you so much, LaJoy, and welcome, 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 everyone. I'm Brian Reynolds, co-founder and co-CEO of Trey Athletes. And tonight we have a very special guest, one of my most favorite people in all of sports. Some people are so famous that they're only known by one name, like Madonna, Cher, or Beyonce. Tonight, we're joined by Andrea Hudi, who is widely considered to be one of, if not the very best strength and conditioning coaches in all of college sports, and who is affectionately known by everyone as simply Hudy. A native of Huntington, Pennsylvania, Hudy was a 4-year letter winner in volleyball at the University of Maryland, where she was a member of the ACC Conference Championship team. Hudy graduated from Maryland with a degree in kinesiology. She earned a master's degree in sport biomechanics from the University of Connecticut. And additionally, Hudy completed her MBA or her master's in business administration from the University of Kansas. Hudy is a nationally acclaimed sports performance coach, honored in 2013 as National Strength Coach of the Year, having coached the Yukon Huskies, the Kansas Jayhawks, and the Texas Longhorns. She's a certified strength and conditioning specialist by the NSCA, a USAW Level 1 coach, and an author, penning a book titled Power Positions, Championship Prescriptions for Ultimate Sports Performance. In 2017, the National Strength and Conditioning Association honored Hudy with a Lifetime Achievement Award called the Impact Award, given to an individual whose career has greatly contributed to the advancement of the national or international strength and conditioning or fitness industries. In more than 25 seasons of collegiate strength and conditioning coaching, Hudy has worked with more than 70 former student athletes who have gone on to play in the NBA or WNBA. And did I mention she's coached 9 national championship teams? A woman who needs no introduction. Welcome, Hudy.
Again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all ours. Today, we're going to be talking about personal identity and specifically how it relates to being an athlete. Athletic identity is defined as the degree to which an individual identifies with being an athlete and how much this individual looks to others for external acknowledgement of that role. Basically, it's how an athlete perceives themselves. Having a strong athletic identity often leads to a strong sense of self and confidence in who you are. This can increase an individual's self-confidence, and it often adds to their health benefits through increased physical activity. However, overweighting your athletic identity can also lead to potential risks or problems, such as emotional difficulties dealing with an injury, difficulty adjusting at the end of an athletic career, and/or a lack of interest or the pursuit of career and educational opportunities beyond sports. Today, Hudy and I are going to discuss the importance of having a wide range of experiences and interests, how to find and tap into them to be a well-rounded individual, and why achieving balance can be tougher for athletes in particular. To kick things off, Hudy, let's go way back to Huntington, Pennsylvania. What did you want to be when you grew up, and how important were sports to you as a kid?
Sports were very important to me. I was the youngest of five children in an Irish Catholic family. So competition was there. We fought for, and my parents would be mortified, but we fought for food. You fought for TV time. You fought for everything was a fight. So, and when I say fight, I mean competition. So everything that we did was really competitive. And I guess being the youngest too, I was an underdog. So everybody was always faster than I was. They were stronger than I were, and then they were smarter. So it was just like, I was always one step behind. So having to fight and fight and fight, that was just, I guess, who I was, and competition. And you talk about knowing who you are. I always say you got to know who you are through your core values, and always, define three things that can lead you through life and that you can always fall back on. But when I was younger, I mean, shoot, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a Coast Guard helicopter pilot because I thought it'd be cool to live on the coast. After college, I took the Coast Guard exam, and they wouldn't let me in the Coast Guard because I had had knee surgery. So I had metal in my knee. So I was completely eliminated from that. And that was kind of devastating, but you move on. And then I thought I wanted to get into corporate fitness because financially I was motivated, but then I got into corporate fitness and I was not that financially motivated because it just didn't match who I was. So then I got into teaching and coaching, and I was the youngest of five. As I said, my parents were traditional teachers. So teaching was just part of who I was. I learned it growing up at the dinner table, and it was just a part of everything that I've ever known. So I feel like, teaching and coaching, coaches get wins and losses. In the weight room, you don't get wins and losses. We say we get results. So I feel like I'm a teacher who looks for results physically.
You're a teacher looking for those gains. I love it. I know that you and I talked about this a little bit in kind of our prep call. We talked about how the majority of top athletes often specialize in their sport by the age of 12 these days. And additionally, fast forwarding just a few years, approximately 60% of college athletes see themselves more as athletes than as students. Based on all that we've read and researched, it seems like pouring everything into your sport can oftentimes kind of negatively cement your identity to the success that you have in that sport. And on the flip side, we also talk about the importance of having a really wide range of experiences and interests and how to find and tap into them to be a really well-rounded individual. So Hudy, in high school and in college, in addition to wanting to be a Coast Guard and obviously beat your four siblings out at everything that you could possibly imagine, what activities or extracurricular events, both in and out of sports, did you do to diversify your student athlete experience?
I think the most important thing that I was a part of was work and understanding the value of a dollar. I mowed lawns and I did everything that I could, since I was 8 years old. So I don't think a lot of athletes have that concept of how much money is worth and what value money is. And then when they get out of school, it's like, whoa, I got to find a job to pay for my apartment. But then they don't even know where to start. But I was fortunate enough that most of my extracurricular activities were jobs where and those were competitive too, because you had to work harder than everybody else at the job if you wanted to get paid more. So, to understand the value of money and the value of time, I think is hugely important, especially for athletes these days, because again, I don't know how many athletes that I've worked with recently have had jobs. Everybody's always looking for a scholarship, but outside of that, what are we doing? So the extracurricular activities I had were training, athletics, academics, and earning money.
What were a couple of your early jobs in addition to mowing lawns, just out of curiosity? I'll tell you, my very first job, I worked at Panera Bread Company. So I smelled like Asiago cheese all the time and it was totally worth it. So tell me a little bit more about your jobs.
I unfortunately smelled like gasoline. I grew up on one of the biggest lakes in Pennsylvania and I was a dockhand. So, and that was hard work. And after my coaching career, I might go back to it because I love boats and I love being around the water. So that'll always be a part of who I am and how I look at things and what I want to be a part of. So um, yeah, you know, I would clean cars. I detailed things. I did anything to earn money, you know, it was good.
I respect it. And speaking of, that toughness that you had sort of instilled in you as a young person, I think one of the toughest things for any athlete to do is playing their last competitive game. And sometimes we know it's coming, like when we're playing our last game for our school or our club team before we graduate. Other times we never see it coming, right? Like an unexpected injury is the first thing that kind of comes to my mind. When you were in high school and college, did you or any of your close friends have a difficult time adjusting to life after sport, after you hung up your jersey for the last time?
That's a great question because I never identified myself as a basketball player or a volleyball player or a track athlete. Um, I don't even identify myself as a coach, you know. So recently I'm on the job market, and it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? And coaching isn't the only thing for me. So I was fortunate to have an array of experiences to feed from. And not, I didn't identify as one thing really. What I could do is fall back on my core values on who I am, because I don't care what the job is. I would work hard, I would be competitive, and I would put pressure on myself to be the best.
I love that. Are those kind of the three main core values that you would say are your own? Competition?
Yeah, I love this one because this is a great question, because persistence, integrity, and hard work. But what you're good at can also be a negative too, because I thought I was persistent and some people think I'm stubborn. And I was like, well, I never looked at it like that. So it comes off the wrong way to people. And then if you have a lot of integrity, it's like, okay, well, does she have a willingness to bend? And hard work, not everybody likes hard work, and they're like, well, what's she trying to prove? So you have to kind of understand what those core values are and how you are perceived to others too, and how you fit in.
Entirely. One follow-up question to kind of this idea of, the toughness of playing your last game. Obviously, you experienced it not just as a player, and you were able to, really hang your hat not just on your core values, but this wide berth of experiences. Now as a coach, talk to us about what it's been like for you to work with thousands of athletes heading into their last collegiate game. What advice do you give to those athletes who are struggling or having a tough time with that experience?
Yeah, again, I think knowing who you are personally, because the experiences will come and go, whatever those are, whether it's competing in sports or competing in your job or raising a family, all those things will, those core values you fall back on. And it's who you are as an individual, that you don't identify with anything outside of that. Like, again, I never identified as a coach. I never have ever introduced myself as Coach Hudy, ever. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just don't, that's not who I am, or
Totally.
volleyball player Hudy. I don't introduce myself as that.
You're just Hudy.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, it's not, oh, what do you do? It's who are you? That'd be a better question when you have a conversation with somebody. Not what do you do? It's, well, who are you? Yeah.
You're reading my mind, and we're going to get to that here in just one second. I think at Trey Athletes, we often talk about how like sports are what we do. It's not who you are. So for example, there's a difference in saying, I am a basketball player versus I play basketball. And we talk about how you can identify as an athlete, but you're so much more than that. And you don't need to live up to the world's expectations of you, just your own. So in one of our recent Fireside chats, our amazing guest speaker, Batuli Kamara, talked about, and I'm paraphrasing here, she basically said, you're so much more than just a basketball player. You're an amazing brother or sister. You're an amazing reader or writer, friend, son or daughter, etc. And it really reminded me of this scene in a recent TV show, one of my all-time favorites called Ted Lasso, where a really famous soccer player named Roy Kent is getting ready to retire, and he's really broken up about it. So Roy, his girlfriend, asks his niece Phoebe to come over, sit down, close her eyes, and just describe Roy. And Phoebe says, who she's probably 7 or 8 years old, she says, well, he's my uncle. His beard is scratchy. He buys me ice cream. He swears a lot. He's really funny, and I love him. And that really sort of like made me sit down and think for a second, because it's so much more than just sports, right? And I think one of the things that I wanted to hear from you was like, how do you think your friends and family would describe you?
Fun, but I don't think my athletes describe me as fun.
You're beating me to one of my next questions here. So if your friends and family describe you as fun, maybe how would your teammates have described you in high school and college?
Yeah, I would say I've been fun, reliable, consistent, hardworking, competitive, like all those things that I am as a human make me a better athlete. It's not the other way around.
100%. How do you think your athletes would have described you, who you worked with at UConn, KU, Texas, et cetera?
Probably one that has high standards. I don't have, not that it's not fun. I try to make it fun, but I also have a disciplined environment where people follow rules and have integrity, and there are certain standards that you operate by.
Always. And then I think a really important question is, how would you describe yourself?
Probably the opposite of all of that. Not disciplined. No, like, yeah, I think we're hard on ourselves. We're hardest on ourselves the most. So I think that's probably what makes me competitive, is that I'm not ever disciplined enough. I don't work hard enough. You know, all those things that I think are my core values push me to be better, because those are the things that I don't think I am enough of.
That's one thing I know about you, is you're constantly pushing for better, whether it's in yourself or someone else. And I think that's something about you that just really shines through in everything that you do. So let's go back. So you have this successful volleyball career. It comes to a close at Maryland, and you were majoring in kinesiology. When did you know that you wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach, sort of after that short stint between the Coast Guard and sort of like personal fitness? What drove you back to that? Talk to us a little bit about kind of those teachable moments.
Well, again, the military was always an option. My father was a Marine, so I feel like I'm an honorable mention Marine just because I grew up that way. So the military, in that disciplined environment, and those things intrigued me a lot. I didn't go that route. So after I didn't get into the Coast Guard, I thought that I wanted to get into corporate fitness, because I love anatomy, but I took an aptitude test when I was in junior high, and I came home and I was like, Mom, I'm going to be an auto mechanic. And she was like, no, you're not going to be an auto mechanic. But I should have been, right? She told me no, but then I should have been, looking back on it, because I would have been a really good auto mechanic. But further down the road, I get my degree in sport biomechanics. So, you know, there was a parallel there, that I have a mechanical brain. I think of things mechanically. So I got into this anatomy and physiology thing, and then I get into corporate fitness, and I didn't like it because it was a write-off for people. Then they didn't enjoy fitness where I did. So I was like, once you start sweating, let's go, you know, now's the time to push. And they're like, no, I'm done. And I was like, what? You know? So I figured out then that sports performance, and what my sport performance coach in college, that's kind of what I wanted to pursue. And I got a GA-ship at the University of Connecticut, and my strength coach in college said, yeah, you don't want to go work for that guy. He's crazy. And I was like, that's exactly why I want to go work for that guy. You know, so it's interesting. A lot of people telling you what not to do. And I just did what I wanted to do. So I was very independent in my thinking and just did what I wanted to do. So
Blazing your own trail per usual. So you get this GA ship at UConn, and you talked about kind of finding the right courses along the way, and biomechanics and what really sort of piqued your interest through sport performance. Did you seek out or did you find a mentor through this process?
my mentor was Jerry Martin. He was the head strength and conditioning coach there. But Coach Ariema was with women's basketball. Coach Calhoun was with men's. And then we had Nancy Stevens with his field hockey. And then we had soccer. And there was just this culture there at the University of Connecticut, a small school in Connecticut that just was this, you walked in the door and it was competitive and everything about it was competitive. And it was very different than the experience that I had in college at Maryland. And again, being a smaller school, it was like you got to know everybody. And those people on other sports pushed other people, in other sports too. So it was like the women's basketball team won a national championship in 95 and then they were the champions. So then that just standard just elevated everybody else, and how they practiced and what they did elevated everybody else. Their standards were high. They pushed me as a coach. I thrived in the environment. I didn't get that in college from my coaches or the environment that I had, but that's what I wanted. And boy, did I thrive in it. I was working 16-hour days and, you sit down, you fall asleep. And I was going to school and it was just the most fun, competitive, hardworking, high standard environment that I had that was churning out these champions, not just in basketball, but in other sports. And it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had.
It's almost like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? It reminds me, my mom always used to like drill into us kids, you are who you hang with, you are who you hang with, right? And I think that like surrounding yourself with a culture and with people who are going to push you to be a better version of yourself, as opposed to make bad decisions or be selfish or otherwise, it just changes your entire outlook.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the coaches that were making me better, not my colleagues, but the athletes were too. They had a standard and they were competitive.
I love that. Well, taking this a slightly different direction here, but speaking of sports performance, injuries and the mental or emotional havoc that they wreak on athletes was another problem area that we talked about in our prep call. As a sports performance coach, what tips do you have for athletes who suffer a setback from, major injury, and they might be struggling from an identity standpoint, whether that's mentally or emotionally?
Well, I think what has made me a better coach or has separated me from other coaches is the fact that I was injured as an athlete. So here I was 14 or 15 years old and I hurt my leg, my knee, and it was just, that was back in the day too. That, oh, you twisted your knee. Okay, well, let's just tape you up and throw you back out in the court. It was like, no, I think I really got hurt. No, but you could still play. So, and then it just kept happening and I kept getting hurt. And it was before all this sports medicine stuff. And I think, I lead from a position of empathy with people that, one, I don't want them to get hurt. And two, if they are hurt, I'm going to listen to you. But I'll know if you're not telling me the truth, like if you're faking an injury, that's kind of obvious to see in your attitude, because if somebody's really hurt, they're miserable. So I lead from this position of I've been hurt and I've dealt with injuries my whole life. So how can then, if somebody gets hurt, how can we help them get back to what they want to be? So
I love that. I think that leading from a place of empathy is something that a lot of us are learning, actively all the time. So to be able to apply that in, your work environment, working with young people, I'm sure is empathy as a whole is just so powerful as it relates to connecting with other people and continuing to grow in your role.
I don't know if I was always that way as a coach, but as I've gotten older, that's really probably because everybody comes from a different background, everybody comes from a different learning experience, everybody has different coaches, and you don't know what motivates everybody. So everyone is different, and we treat them differently and as individuals. So it's important.
I love that. And just a quick reminder, we have, another, call it 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to open up for some questions with Hudy. So for any of you fine folks at home, make sure you submit your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So shifting gears just a little bit, but still sticking with identity in sports, you're at the absolute top of your career as a woman in a primarily male-dominated industry. And then I think a little further, research shows that from Ernst & Young in particular, it shows that approximately 95% of all female executives played sports, and more than 50% of all female executives were college athletes. So it appears there's this really clear linkage between participation in sports as a young woman, whether that's learning leadership, discipline, team building, et cetera, and really high achieving women in the workplace. So my question is, what tips or suggestions do you have for all the young women out there watching, listening, who want to achieve the same level of career success that you've had in a primarily male-dominant industry?
Well, I think one, I would say be competitive. That's the most important thing. But I think it also depends on whether women want a family or not, because I'll tell you that research changes when women have families, and children. So that all changes the game. So either, again, it's hard to compare. It's almost three categories: men, women with no children, and women with children and families. So those are all three very different things. But I would say, whatever you want to do, be competitive. If you want to be good, be competitive. You have to be competitive, and you have to be willing to fail every day. And you have to be willing to learn from the failure and fail forward, we say. And I fail every day. I succeed every day. Every day it's an emotional roller coaster. And a lot of people, I think, focus on, the mental health of things these days. But I like, we talk about heart rate variability all throughout the day. Well, what about emotional variability? Because I think that's really good. And I think it's really important. You do have sad days, you do have happy days, so I think people tend to focus on negative mental health, versus, hey, that negative experience will be a positive later.
I absolutely love that. I think that one of the things that really jumps out at me that you just said is this idea of like failing forward, right? Rebecca and I talk about it all the time as it relates to startups, and this idea of lean startup methodology, basically like testing small so you can fail small and then continue to grow and iterate. When did you learn that, I guess, perfectionism isn't the right route? Because I think that a lot of young people today, with like, the manicured world that we live in and social media, that anything less than perfection can be really daunting for a young person. Talk to us a little bit about like how you instill that fail forward mentality in your athletes.
Yeah. That's a great question. I have something to say about social media, because that's just it's irrational. That's the most imperfect world. It's irrational, and people judge themselves on social media, and that's not good. But if you can fail with your family, and you can fail with your friends, and you can fail with your teammates, and you can fail forward and get better and be around those people that elevate you, I think that's really important to understand who you're surrounding yourself with. That's the most important thing. Be around people that are going to elevate you, not put you down. So
it sounds like a lot of that comes back to, again, surrounding yourself with the right people so that you're comfortable enough to be your true self and to experience some failure.
It does take practice to be comfortable failing. Like, I remember my first presentation. I was 22 years old, and I was speaking right after this really dynamic guy, and I just broke out in hives. And I was like, I am never doing public speaking again. But I knew that if I had to be successful in this field, that I knew I was going to have to be a better public speaker. And I don't even know if I'm still any good at it. It's like you go back and you know, 100 presentations later, you're like, man, that could have been better. Just like games, just like practice, man, it can always be better. So I think it's the Google slogan is that done is better than perfect.
I'm writing that on my bathroom mirror. I don't know about you.
I think it is. I could be wrong though.
So speaking of social media, I have a question for you because so for everyone at home, I have been a fan of Hudy for the longest time. I'll never forget a few years ago, the first time I met you, we were heading out to grab a bite to eat at a Mexican restaurant with Rebecca, Ivana, a handful of other people. And I told you, I was like, Hudy, I follow you on Twitter. Like, you are such a big deal to me. I've been a fan forever. And you pulled out your phone. You said, what's your Twitter name? And you go, now I follow you too. Not a big deal. So talk to us a little bit more about social media, because it seems like you're pretty nonchalant about the image that you put up. You're comfortable in your own skin, and it seems like you take a really authentic and intentional approach as compared to trying to like gloss over some of the experiences that you have.
Yeah, I think those are, for me, the coaching part of it is it's authentic, but social media is such a business motivated thing now too. So I just post what we do, so a lot of people are interested in it. And it does, I want it to be positive. I don't want negative in my life. So if it is negative, I delete it or unfollow or do whatever. It's a one-shot deal for me, talking about being perfect. It's like when I do post, I'm like, I get it checked like 3 times before I post something, because I don't want somebody to be like, oh, you misspelled something, and it's like, well, obviously I did, sorry, so it does go through, like I do make people check it. I check it 1,000 times before I push post, because I know that somebody's going to, be under the microscope with it. So I feel like I post less and less the older I get.
I love it. I think that especially kind of bringing these two worlds together, right? Where we were talking about powerful women through sports, we're talking about social media. I think that there's a pressure, especially on young women, as it relates to the persona that they put forth on social media. Do you have any tips or advice for the young women listening at home?
Well, I think it's the guys too. I work with men, and man, sometimes, it's tough to judge one over the other. People are just as hard on themselves. I think women internalize it a little bit more than guys do. It is what it is. Just, I would say, be positive and be safe with it.
Perfect. Okay, so one other thought that I had here is we talked about how competitive you are. We've talked about how fun and kind-hearted you are. I've heard some crazy stories about how far you push yourself and your athletes, but I also know that they love and respect you. And outside of work, you're able to kick back and enjoy your time with family and friends. So talk to us a little bit about how you've achieved such amazing balance in your life, and what tips you might have for our young athletes at home who are trying to balance school, sports, social lives, family, etc.
That's the other thing. Balance, I think, is irrational, right? So you try to balance the best you can. I don't know. And again, it's cyclical too, whether you're in season or out of season. I think that there does need to be some type of balance in your life, because eventually, if you do something too much, it's going to get you in the end, just like exercise, just like basketball, just like sports. If you get really good at it and you focus so much on it, it'll probably bite you in the butt in the end. But balance is kind of irrational too. So I think people try to make the best of what their priorities are, and then you go from there. But yeah, and sometimes those priorities change throughout the year. So you do the best you can.
Different person in different seasons, right? So when you talk about how balance, it's an irrational concept. Talk to us about some of the times when you felt like you were absolutely buried. Like, how did you manage some of that stress? And I guess, how did you come out on the other side feeling accomplished as opposed to kind of worn down?
Yeah, I don't think I'm probably one to push myself, and I know who I am. I believe so, that where I'll push myself physically, I tend not to push myself emotionally or mentally, where like I would rather take a nap than stress about something too much. But when it comes to the physical aspect, that's where I've gotten myself in trouble with 8 knee surgeries and 2 shoulder surgeries and a lot of other injuries. Because I think it's important for me to set myself up as an example. Um, but sometimes that gets in the way too. So um, yeah, I'm not one to be an emotional or mental, or I don't tend to go overboard on that. At least I don't think so. Somebody else might think so.
I love that. So speaking of someone else, talk to us about, because you're a really social person, I think is a nice way to start this. I feel like you connect with athletes and non-athletes. I feel like you connect with people of all backgrounds and different experiences. Talk to us a little bit about, I think for some athletes, it can be really intimidating to try to make friends outside of sports, for example. Like, how do you go make friends? Talk to us about, when you were in high school and college, what was your social circle like? How did you make friends and connect with people beyond sports?
Well, I think, the one thing that I've always done is put myself out there, and I'm not afraid to fail. Yeah, I've failed 1,000 times asking people out on dates, or just, I mean, what's the worst they could say is no? Okay, well, then life goes on. Or yeah, what's the worst thing that somebody doesn't want to be my friend? I'm at a point in my life too. It's like friend applications, those applications are dropping, you know. So I don't know. I'm just one who has not been afraid to fail. And when you do, what's the worst thing that happen? You look at yourself in the mirror and you smile and you just move on, and one foot in front of the other.
I think that authenticity is what really resonates with people, though, right? Like, the fact that you are so unwilling to compromise about who you are, the fact that you feel like it seems to me like you know yourself really well, and all of those wonderful characteristics and values that we talked about at the top, is really what helps drive this idea of who you are as an individual. So.
But I think, again, it all goes back to failure and
Mm,
understanding who you are and how you respond to that. Because how you respond to success is very different than how you respond to failure, right?
totally true. So speaking of success, like I mentioned, you are at the top of your career. I think that what you have built in terms of accolades and accomplishment just blows the doors off of just about anybody else in the industry. I forgot to mention you started your own Midwest Performance Conference as well. You dabble in everything, which I love. Talk to us a little bit about how you set goals, and where you see yourself in the next few years.
Yeah, but those are other people's definitions of success, not mine. So it's like I just lost a job, right, to a different staff. But I would tell you that my resume doesn't, nobody can match my resume, what I've done and how I do it. And I'm very proud of that. But it doesn't matter to anybody else, So it's like, so what are we doing? One, all I know is when I lose my job, I'm going to go find another one. And if I don't find another one, I'll find something that I'm good at and that I'll make money doing until I, find something that I absolutely love in the place where I really want to be. So again, those are other people's definitions of success. And um, somebody told me one time, they said, Hudy, congratulations, you've done a really good job. You've been so successful. And I was like, man, I've just worked with athletes who are way better than me, who listen to the coaching, who are super talented. And he said, no, you need to stop right there. What you did was you made the best of every opportunity that you were given, and I thought that was the biggest compliment I had, because I did. But again, you could have a resume that nobody can match and still lose your job.
That's a lesson in resilience right there. Um,
Right.
And speaking of great topics of conversation, we actually have our first question here that I want to ask you from the audience. So Ty Woodson says, you said that failing is going to happen and that positivity is the best option. The negatives will turn into positives. So at what point in your career were you at your lowest, and how did your toughness help you with that, or a point when you knew you had to change your outlook on your career or life?
I knew that all I wanted to do was probably teach people and help people and understand people and develop relationships. So I in an athletic competitive world. So I've chosen to do that, and I've continued to do that. I can't see myself, like, if I needed to sit behind a computer and enter data, like, that's not me. I would never do that. I would rather, you know, go get a job, in the heat in hard labor, because I'm good at hard work, physical work. I'm good at it. So I don't know what my lowest point, I don't know if I've ever had a low point at work. I enjoy work and, losing, but that happens. Nobody's perfect. Um, so did I answer the question? I don't even know.
I think you did a pretty decent job of answering it in Hudyisms. So I'll ask you.
Just a bunch of thoughts thrown at the wall.
I'll ask you a slightly different version of the question. Talk to us about resilience, and talk to us about a time that maybe you overcome or you overcame an issue that many other people would have either seen as insurmountable or might have given up along the way. What kept you going forward?
Yeah, what story when I was little resonated with me, and I don't know if it was the storyteller or what it was, but the little engine that could, just keep going, and you just keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going, and you put one foot in front of the other. And the worst thing that could happen in the situations that I've been in is that I get better, period. And you just keep going, one foot in front of the other, and things will work out, and hard work will always trump everything else, in my opinion.
That is awesome. Okay, so this next question comes to us from David James. David would like to know if you, Hudy, could give 15-year-old Hudy a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't get hurt. um, uh, that might be it, is like there's enough, and then there's too much, and understand maybe what is too much and when's enough, because all I do is push, 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 push. And I feel as I've gotten older, I've understood that concept a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, just when's your limit, because again, it's always too much for me. I don't know when to stop.
I've seen this testament firsthand. David had a follow-up question too. Looking back, do you have a moment or a highlight that sticks with you as a high point?
One of my best athletic and even academic, you could apply it to academic, you can apply it athletic, is when you put your best foot forward on anything that you do, and you know that you've over prepared and you could take on anything. Those are the high points. I mean, my high point physically was probably in gym class in high school, when my phys ed teacher went nuts because I just tried really hard in a soccer game, So all those moments add up. It's not like the TV moments or things like that. It's just what you do every day and who you are every day. Those are the highlights. Those are everything that, the experiences with the athletes. I could tell you every experience that I've had with an athlete when they've had a breakthrough. Myself, when I've had a breakthrough, you have those breakthroughs every day if you push yourself.
You're having breakthroughs all day, every day, because that's what you do. You're Hudy. So our next question comes from Coach Stephanie Cooper. She says, Have you seen LeBron James, the kid who makes the home gym? What advice do you have for kiddos at home during COVID and they still need to maintain basketball shape? Would you have any suggestion for things to use around the house, parks, etc.?
I would say go play other sports, not just if it's a basketball player, go play soccer, go play football, be competitive. Set up neighborhood games where people have to do leadership skills and set up the games and understand that they need to communicate with others, on how to break into teams, how to lead others, how to be a follower when that's the case. But even play with your parents, be competitive, play card games. Like, I just feel like there's this disconnect, with video games and social media. Put your phones down and play games because they're fun. And you learn a lot about yourself.
Coming back to identity. I love it. So let me look here. This next question is anonymous. Where do you think you get your courage from?
I think my parents, my siblings, my family. My mom was always one to not have barriers. I played football with my brother, and he was older, and it was with the helmet and the shoulder pads and thing. And my dad was supporting my brother, and my mom would be like, "Now go kick his butt." So again, that's that switch that she didn't. There's no off switch, unfortunately. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten the dimmer. The dimmers happened. But the courage, who Brene Brown said, you can't get the courage without passing through vulnerability. And every day I make myself vulnerable. So it's not comfortable, but I mean, we do it, right? And you just put one foot in front of the other, just like the little engine that could.
I am the biggest Brene Brown fan of all time. Her talks around vulnerability and shame in particular are something to be seen. So another recommendation for our audience listening at home, and for those who are working on kind of shaping their own identity and working through some of those struggles, check out Brene Brown, check out Ted Lasso. By the way, Brene had the group from Ted Lasso on her podcast. I'm obsessed with all of it.
Ted Lasso is great.
It's phenomenal. This next question, a little lighter note. One of our Trey athletes would like to know who or what is your spirit animal, Hudy?
You ever see Animal on the Muppets when he plays the drums? Or Kermit when he's like...
That's amazing.
I have a Muppet as a spirit animal.
You're a Muppet as a spirit animal. That's awesome. And then someone else would like to know, if you could bring back dinosaurs, would you?
Yeah, totally. I'd have a park.
This sounds like a bad idea. We've seen this in the movie.
Yeah. And then, you could set people loose in the park. It'd be like modern, Jurassic Park. I'm totally in.
Wow. Note to self, don't go to Hudy's dinosaur park. Okay, so another question that's anonymous. This person wants to know, what does vulnerability mean to you?
Putting yourself out there and not being afraid to fail, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, in relationships, getting rid of your pride, maybe. And that's taken a long time to learn, but I still have problems with it. But you try to listen to those people. Everybody's trying to coach you through your relationships with them, right? Whether it's with your family or brothers and sisters, they're telling you what they want. You just need to listen.
So true. Okay, so I think that one of the things that's really jumped out at me through our conversation is this idea of how you've been incredibly intentional, but at the same time, you also just described how you basically said, like, that's other people's definition of success, trying to plan my life out, trying to look, 3 to 5 years down the road. So hearing about how intentional you are, and you've obviously achieved incredible success, How do you focus and stay present on the here and now? And what drives you as opposed to like accolades or achievements?
Well, I think the here and now, the present, is the most important, because what the future creates anxiety and the past creates depression. So being present and having your feet right where you are, I think, is the most important thing. And trying to be the best at what you do every day is the most important. Was that the end of your question?
I said, I think you nailed it. I'm sorry, I was still on mute there. So our next question comes from Michael Boone, who said, you spoke about not being afraid to fail. What do you do to help your athletes develop the confidence or courage to put themselves in a position that they may fail?
You make them fail. Yeah, they will fail. And that's the, I like with the weight room and reps, I think, sometimes it's important to fail and to end on a failure, because that could lead to the next success. So not that we fail effort wise every time, but it's constant feedback. It's constructive feedback. It's positive feedback. It's what we need to correct. So I think if we want to get better, we're going to listen to people, right? It's when you don't want to get better, that's when you don't want to listen.
Could not agree more. So our next question comes from Miss Amber Brown, who says, who is the best athlete you have coached in your opinion, and what did you learn from them?
This is going to sound corny, but I would tell you all the athletes are the best athletes, because they've all been different. If you talk about athletically, it depends on what sport and what position they play in terms of who the best athlete is. But, if you want to look at best basketball player, gosh, I've been doing this for 27 years. And the first athlete that I worked with at the University of Connecticut was Ray Allen. So it's like you go from Ray Allen, and then there's Ben McLemore, Joel Embiid, Andrew Wiggins, Rebecca Fikert's in there. She'll tell you. But yeah, I think what I love are the relationships that I have with people. And I think that's cool, because, I've learned from people who aren't great athletes either.
So it's like you're reading my mind once again. The next question that we have, so there's this Maya Angelou quote where she says, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. How do you want your athletes to feel about you?
So there's the golden rule is treat people how you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat people how they want to be treated. So you got to get to know them. So I think that's important with the relationship part of it. What was the original question?
How would you want your athletes to feel?
Just like they got better, that I'm a results-based person, not a time-based. So as long as we're getting results, let's just keep moving forward. I look at athletic development like the stock market. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, but let's just keep trending upwards.
Woo! That is excellent advice for us to end on, my friend. And with that, our Q&A with Andrea Hudi has come to a close. And Hudy, I just want to thank you for your incredible experiences and stories. Thank you so much for talking with us tonight about building a non-athlete identity as part of Trey Season 3. And in advance of passing it back to LaJoy, 2 quick notes for the audience at home. Number 1, we're getting ready to launch a quick poll right now, so please complete this poll before you leave. And number 2, please stick around because LaJoy has some amazing little tidbits for us in advance of calling it a night. Finally, on behalf of every single one of our Trey athletes, coaches, and families, thank you so much for joining us, Hudy. You are truly an inspiration.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Take us home, LaJoy.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us, Andrea. It was It was great just hearing everything you had to say. I definitely learned a lot, being competitive and being prepared to fail, how that's important. So thank you for sharing that information with us. To all of our participants, thank you so much for joining us tonight. The poll has been launched, so make sure you take a moment to go ahead and answer those questions so we can get your feedback on what you thought of tonight's conversation. Don't forget to register for next week's Fireside Chat, which will be on athlete mental toughness and well-being. We'll drop a link in the chat for you so you can register for that. Coaches, make sure you host your debrief session sometime this week. And don't forget to take the debrief survey following your debrief session. So again, we can get feedback and we can continue to improve our programming to make it the best programming that's possible for you and your athletes. For any athletes who were not able to attend, don't worry. This has been recorded and we'll be posting a link to the YouTube channel live on our social media. And of course, engage with us on social media at Trey Athletes, Twitter and Instagram. It's your chance to win a pizza party. We've already given out one, and we want to make sure that we can highlight all the amazing things that's being done in season 3 by our Trey Athletes. So thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate you. To athletes everywhere, good night.